So I want to start with saying it's been a couple of months since we did our podcast with David Weiss, and
Yeah.
we got completely roasted in the comment section.
I don't even remember what I said in the video.
Oh, there was a ton of things which were said in the video, but a lot of the flat earthers commented, with the term cognitive dissonance, I believe.
Yeah, I saw that being brought up like multiple times. That is very interesting terminology that they're using.
It's very ironic as well, because to my understanding of cognitive dissonance is that whenever new information is posed, it causes some discomfort, a mental discomfort or something.
I see a lot of these are like very fixated on us, like the two globies, so to speak. And like, I don't know about you, but we're not the ones with the hot take here. Like, we're like two like normal, random people. I don't know how they like live, like, how they talk to other people. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How do they go about their day-to-day lives with other people if like this is the sort of reaction they have on like us? Like.
Yeah, it's super strange because and I was planning on bringing this up like maybe later on in our discussion is the kind of mentality the flat earthers have. I mean, no disrespect to Dave. I think he does a great job. You say whatever you want about his belief. He does a great job in presenting it as, as facts or whatever you want to say. But the mentality behind the flat earthers and the fact that they don't trust literally anything that they've been taught in school. I mean, just from the kind of stuff that David was saying, he mentioned something about a continent, Terraria or Tutoria or something. I can't remember the name.
I don't remember.
But yeah,
once
he
I got
said
to
like
that later portion, it was just like I just sort of clocked out there because at that point it was just kind of getting too wacky.
I mean, he's like William Shakespeare didn't exist, and we all lived in harmony on this one singular continent called Terraria. I don't know. I'm just paraphrasing over here, but the kind of rabbit hole which you go down when you're a flat earther, I think it's very hard to get out of. And if you ask me, it's like kind of dangerous in a way, honestly. Just simply because that you don't trust anyone. Imagine living your life every day thinking that everyone around you is being lied to by the powers that be. Like, can you imagine just having to live in that sort of bubble and that kind of distrust that comes along with that?
I can't imagine. But I mean, they have the internet now. This is something that's very new in history. They could now find each other and, have their little community.
It's pretty crazy, dude. And the kind of names that people are being called. Like, I think my favorite one is ball hugger.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some
ball
pretty
liquor.
Funny
Ball liquor. Sorry, there's ball hugger and there's ball liquor. I think ball liquor is the far better one. I was shocked at how many people jumped on the video. I'm just looking at the like to dislike ratio right now. It's actually not too bad, honestly.
77 comments. This is actually, I was expecting more, but I guess there's just 77 of them here. So
yeah, 77 comments, but 43 likes and 3 dislikes. Like 1,378 views. Like honestly, that was that was by far I was shocked at how many people.
Here's what I wonder. Like, I'm like somewhat sure that at least a good portion of these people are just like taking the piss, and they're like ironically being flat earthers just for the memes. Because
really?
some of these comments are just so they're so funny. Like.
Yeah, I was looking. I took a screenshot.
Oh man.
I took a screenshot. I took a screenshot of a few of the comments as well, and I'm just trying to find them right now. There was someone who commented. Dave said, "You're gonna take a fucking beating in these comments." He was so right, and yeah, he was certainly right. I was just really surprised at how far into the rabbit hole they can go. Like, I mean, when he started talking about in the beginning, especially when he was talking about the lava tubes and stuff, and they were digging in Soviet Russia or something. They were digging down that deep hole, and they were like, they hit something, and we don't know what's down there. So the Earth is flat. Like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like when I was trying
Usually
to.
when you create an argument, you start with a thesis, right? And then you bring up like points that support the thesis. But he brought up like something really random that didn't really have anything to do with flat earth theory. It was just kind of like, "Oh, hey, look, they don't, it just sort of stopped and maybe that means the earth is flat. Who knows?" Like
Yeah, we don't know
uh
what's down there. That's what he said. We don't know what's down there. So I
we
was
don't
just
know
like,
what's down there.
but I mean, if you're going to try and prove something, you need to have a counter argument, right? There has to be like a counterpoint, right? So if they didn't go down there, why didn't they go down there,
Yeah,
right?
like the way science works, right? The reason why it's like reliable like the scientific method is such a reliable method is because you start with, a thesis, right? And you create an experiment that tries to disprove the thesis. And the idea is that you counter like any possible factors or variables that can contribute to like an alternative explanation
Solution,
for
yeah.
this thing, right? And so your goal is to disprove your thesis, right? And if you fail at disproving your thesis, it means that nothing can describe this, or at least most things can't describe this other than your thesis that you had initially, right? And that is evidence for that kind of supports your case, right? And as more experiments are done, more variables are removed, the stronger the case is. And that's why science is so good. It's inherently skeptical. If someone has a claim, they have to try and disprove their claim. That's how it works. But if flat earthers, they go through a different approach. Their approach is they have a thesis, they try to prove it, right? And that's like the definition of confirmation bias. And if you're to, searching for an explanation to prove your thesis, you're going to find things that will help prove your thesis, even if those things could be explained with vastly different explanations. And it's pretty ironic. I saw some comments that were like, "Oh yeah, like the two globies, they were, they had confirmation
Indoctrination.
bias or something," and I'm just like, what?
Indoctrination. That was another word that was thrown out a lot. Indoctrination. But
Yeah,
one
I don't
thing
know.
that really actually caught my attention was the moonlight theory that they had. Moonlight is gold.
Yeah, yeah, that was weird.
So yeah, that was a bit strange as well for me, and I didn't fully understand as to why moonlight was gold. So I actually did some digging into it because I did see a few videos online from just regular people who took one of these uh, infrared thermometers and pointed them at like a place which had moonlight and a place which was under the shade, and the temperature turned out to be vastly different. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Why could that be? So I started digging into it, and what I found was that the like every object radiates a certain amount of heat into the atmosphere, right? That's taken for granted, right? So if you
Yeah,
point the infrared device at concrete in the night, that concrete will tend to be a lot warmer than if you had pointed that same device at a blade of grass, which is also in the
yeah,
sun in the same, just simply because of how they absorb heat and how they radiate
yeah,
heat into the atmosphere. So a lot of these
yeah. Different
experiments, which
material
these guys,
properties.
yeah, exactly. A lot of the experiments which these guys do are from with like things with completely different materials, right?
Oh,
And
so they point it at like a different material that's in the shade
Mhm,
versus another material that's in the moonlight.
exactly,
But like because they're different materials, they have like a
different temperature.
different temperature because that's how much, temperature they're holding in versus like how much they're releasing.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
so scummy. That is actually so scummy.
It is, but the
What the
thing is,
heck?
right, if for those who do not understand like how that stuff works, and honestly, like if I would be honest with you, like when I saw it, like I was like, oh yeah, of course, now that I think about it, it's of course, right? But another consequence of that, right? So even if you take like the same, even if you like just measure the atmosphere in the moonlight versus under the shade, it might be a little different, simply because a lot of the times when people are measuring moonlight, especially on a full moon night and there's no clouds in the sky, because it's very easy to measure moonlight at that point in time, it may appear to be colder. The moonlight may appear to be colder simply because there's no cloud cover in the sky and the heat has all evaporated out into the atmosphere. But if you go underneath something, there's still some amount of heat. So there'll be a negligible change in temperature, negligible to none, but negligible change in temperature. And that's where they go, aha, moonlight is cold. So,
So like if they're like inside like their garage versus outside in like the front yard, obviously their garage would probably be a little warmer than, just outside, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why that's why they think moonlight is colder, but it can be disproven if you sort of really, if you read
Yeah.
into it essentially and just
So
understand
that's what I was talking about
physics.
earlier, with how to conduct a scientific experiment properly. You first have to you have to try and disprove the theory, right? So if they say like, oh, the moonlight is colder than areas where it's shaded at night, right?
Mhm.
So they have to conduct an experiment that basically says, no, the moonlight is, I don't know, either the same temperature or it's warmer, right? And they have to create an experiment that tries to that tries to like prove that, right? And if and like even if you don't have that sort of mentality of trying to disprove your theory, right? It still makes more sense to conduct an experiment where you have like the same material, but one is in the shade and one is not in the shade, right? Like, like,
Exactly.
like when you pointed out that they had different materials, or like it was one in a warm place and one in outside. It's like, well, you know, there's nothing
Yeah,
really much to.
I mean, like when you're pointing it
That's
at
like
concrete
that's
versus
that's
the ground.
confirmation bias to the point of like tunnel vision.
It is, and unfortunately, that's a lot of the flat Earth theories, right? Is that they try and search for, like, if there is something, like for example, someone said in the comments that CGI existed in the '60s and we knew nothing about it or whatever.
Oh yeah, I
Even
saw that. I went on Wikipedia and it says like in the introductory that it was first used in the 1986 film Flight of the Navigator. Like
ah,
like it wasn't even in the 60s. And here's the thing, right? Like I'm in computer science, right? And let me tell you what computers were like in the 60s, okay? Before we even had transistors, our computers had to use like vacuum tube transistors, okay? Like these are massive, like almost like light bulb size, like objects. These transistors, right, that are they're pretty much core to any computer system, because without transistors we can't have like any kind of like more complicated and abstracted integrated circuit, right? And modern computers have literally billions of these, right? Because they shrunk them down to near like atomic scales,
mm,
right? So these computers, right? CGI stands for computer generated imagery, right?
right.
Computers in the 60s, I think they just invented the integrated circuit. I don't think there was anything at that time that could even like uh that is even able to like draw an image, right, from like code at the
Mm.
time, because computers at that time, they were very primitive in the 60s. So let
When
alone
did when did the
CGI.
video game when did the video game Pong come out? Just so we give everyone some understanding. Pong, I think, was in
Pong
the yeah, that was the first video game to be ever released. I believe it was
release
sometime
date
in the '60s,
1972.
1972. And if you
Yeah.
see how rudimentary and basic that looks, if they were talking about CGI existing at that point in time, that is really to the extent that it would look like, honestly. And if you just go into Google and type CGI from the '60s, all right, there's like maybe 2 or 3 images of it,
Oh,
and
okay. The first actual game to ever been invented is this game called Space War. And it was this, basically you had like little ships that like fly around and are affected by gravity. This was in 1962, right?
Mm.
This was in 1962. This was on like in one of those giant university computer rooms, right? They had this little like uh CRT like circular monitor that was like military grade stuff. Like this was like basically like what submarines used to like show to display like radar and or sorry sonar
Mm.
detections. Like this is like to create to and all it could do, right, is like draw these little like triangles and circles, right? That's all it could do. So to even think that they were able to like generate entire like surfaces of the moon or like interiors of ships or like whatever they could come up with, that, you know, you'd need to use practical effects. Like there's
Right.
no way CGI is even involved in this, right?
Right.
And even if you look at the practical effects that were involved, like there was no way that they could have replicated any of that inside a studio, because the lighting and the way the cameras, you know, were at the time, they weren't very advanced cameras. So they, if they wanted to have like exposure from like long distances, they, you know, or lighting, right? Or like the perspectives when you had that like freaking half-hour long video of like the ship arriving to dock with the
Right.
like when they were leaving the moon. Like I can't really like, you know, I'm not like a huge expert, but there's like a video on YouTube that where
Of
these
Apollo 11,
CGI
right? Yeah.
CGI artists
Oh,
they
Corridor Crew. Corridor Crew.
yeah, I watched
Yeah.
that video
Yeah.
and they were like they were discussing like they went in depth with like how like technology at the time just could not have reproduced those, because it's really hard to create like a very like compelling image, like even nowadays, right? You can easily tell when CGI is used nowadays.
Mm.
Like even like some of the most advanced stuff, like you can tell when CGI is used because it's so hard. It's so hard. And to even think that like back then they were able to reproduce to create those scenes, right? Without like just with the technology at the time, it's unthinkable.
And that's the thing with CGI, right? CGI has this, if like we as human beings can look at an object and tell whether or not that object is real.
There's like so many other things, like the dust example, right? When they kicked up dust,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
If it was on Earth, that would turn into a giant like cloud that would just spiral around, right? And they pointed that out. The dust that they kicked up there, it was just like it just, you know, it was just like a splash in the water almost. It was just it went
Mm.
up and then down. There was no cloud, no nothing. And
Mm.
that's impossible to produce unless they had the entire room in a pure like vacuum sealed, like the entire set was in a vacuum sealed room, right? And they had spacesuits, like actual spacesuits that would work like in space, right? So like it would have been probably as hard to create that set and those effects as it would be to actually like fly to space. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
and
oh my gosh.
you know, another thing that he brought up was the gravity airplanes, the gravity planes, which you know drop you
Oh
from
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know
So he
thousands
still
of.
hasn't like brought up where he got that footage. He showed a bunch of these clips. We have he like a lot of these people, they were like causing cognitive dissonance, you know, oh they're not listening, you know, oh like they know everything. It's like, well, no, we're skeptical people. We're not gonna just like accept like, oh okay, he showed us some videos. Like where are those videos from? Like what like he just showed a bunch of videos and expected us to like, you know, just accept like, oh okay, that's evidence, right? Okay. Like
But
what,
even
no,
still,
what
you
are
know,
those
a lot of
videos
them,
from?
like
Like
a lot of these NASA videos, right? So I have the NASA app on my TV, and you know, I check out some of the videos which they have every now and then, and they have a lot of these interviews with the astronauts within the ISS, right? And a lot of the
live
arguments of
interviews, by the way.
live interviews, and a lot of these the arguments are that this is they're all sitting in a gravity plane and stuff. But you see a lot of these interviews, they're like an hour long, man. They're like half an
You
hour,
can't
45 minutes, an hour,
you
like how can you drop someone for an hour? Like, where are you dropping them from? Are
From
you,
space.
yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, I mean, and then they'll bring up, of course, the harnesses and stuff like that. But a lot of the times, right, and a lot of the comments were
No. The
directed at me.
harnesses, I'd like to see these like flat earthers try and recreate the moon landing with harnesses. I'd love to see that. Just watch as they like realize, damn, this is actually impossible because of the laws of physics. Like,
It just doesn't make any sense, right? So when I told David, when he showed this one guy floating in the background in his belt, it was his belt or something. Like, it looked like it was going up and stuff. And I can see why people think it looks like a harness. But this is again confirmation bias, right? Like, if you're in space, if you don't have any gravity around you, things are gonna act weird, right? I mean, things are not gonna be stable. Like, your belt, whatever part of that, of whatever he was wearing, was just like floating upwards or whatever. It could have looked like a harness, but does it necessarily have to be a harness? But for them, the immediate answer is like, no, that is certainly a harness. And that's confirmation bias right there. And it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, because there are times where you see astronauts with water, like actual water, playing around with the globules of water when they squirt it out of a bottle, and it forms these little balls and stuff. And the way they interact with it and stuff, like, it's not, there's no way you can do that in a gravity airplane, or using harnesses or whatever. Like, how do you stick harness on floating water? I mean, people will say it's obviously CGI, but then everything is CGI in
everything
that
is
case.
CGI. Everything is CGI.
There's no winning. That's the thing. There is no winning with them,
Do you
because
like? Here's the thing, right? Those are live streams, right? And you'd have to prepare those CGI water bubbles, right? Because
Mhm.
there's no way you could render those in real life and make them that convincing, like in real time, right? So they'd have to prepare like a very like immaculate script for the astronaut to follow and to put his hands in the correct spots, right? But like obviously in a live stream, they could get told what to do by the audience, and they could do that with 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 their like water bubble. And there's no way that something like that could be rendered live, right? There's like fluid dynamics is like simulation, like water simulation, fluid dynamic simulation. That is a multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry right now, because movie companies, game companies, anything that has an interest in simulating water is pouring money into this technology to make it faster, and for games to make it like you know real time.
Realistic.
But we just haven't gone to that point. To make good convincing fluid dynamic simulations is not only hard on like the artist who's working with the fluid simulations, but it's also like difficult to you know put into movies, because then it has to pass light through it in a convincing way. So they have to have like a live render of the entire room. They have to know where the light sources are. They have to know like how the astronaut's going to interact with it, right? They have to know all these things, and that just
Mhm.
it's not possible to do live. They'd have to like it's like you could try, but it's not going to be convincing. Everyone's going to see that it's CGI, and like there'd be far more people who are pointing this out than
And
than
a lot of the flat earthers say, and David said this as well, is that NASA's CGI is horrible, right? But it's very interesting as to what is
Is
horrible.
it horrible? Is it amazing? Pick one, please. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's very selective, like how they cherry pick, what works for them and what doesn't work for them, right? It's so you can't really. It's very hard to win with them, because it's very hard for them to come out of it. I had a few friends tell me, like, dude, a lot of the stuff that he said was really interesting and made me want to think about it. And then they did think about it, and then they realized, like, oh yeah, that was actually pretty shitty. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
speaking of cherry pick, I think there was like two comments in here. I think I saw, um, where they were just like, "Oh, Dave, I love you. I agree with all your points, but like the perspective one. Do you remember that one where he was
Oh
like
yeah,
showing
yeah. The
Baja
globe.
California. They're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
no, they're actually correct in that's very easy to prove. Just drop that from your argument list,
Yeah,
please.
I saw that.
Here's a link. Here's a link proving the thing. It's like like I'm just like it's that I don't know. Like some people are just like, oh wow, they're they're doing mental gymnastics trying to like prove these things. It's like, no, this like we weren't even taught this in school. This is just you just know this stuff. Like that's why it was
Yeah.
so
I mean,
strange when you brought that up.
anyone who's half a photographer knows how to play around with perspective. Like
Yeah,
it's not hard to do. It's really not
like
hard to do.
it's not like you don't. I'm not like quote what some of these are just like, oh yeah, like they're indoctrinated. They've uh what was it? It was like something to do with the lab coats or something. Oh yeah, their minds and senses are completely handed over to lab coats. It's like what lab coats? I have a globe in my room. I could just bring it up to my face and make that same perspective, and then see like, oh, suddenly Baja, like the distance between Baja California and Mexico is like half the freaking distance of the Earth. Like, like like it's just like I'm boggles the mind. Even
Man.
with my diagram, which was very like plain to see how perspective works, and you can pretty much just use your brain and just figure out why Baja California, like the distance is
Mhm.
so large compared to like the circumference of the Earth. Well, yeah, use what you know about perspective and apply it, and you'll see. Oh, wait, it's because you're looking so close to the Earth that this distance is now pretty much like a good chunk, like a large amount of your perspective, right? But that perspective, you're not actually seeing the entire circumference of the Earth or half of the circumference of the Earth. If you move your camera away, suddenly the distance between Baja California and Mexico is way smaller. Now it's actually a little bit more accurate to use as a measurement to compare it with the rest of the Earth.
I think here's what I think, and here's this is a theory of mine as to why earthers are the way they are, is that their sense of scale is all messed up. Like they don't really have a sense of scale or perspective for that matter, right? Or the ability to rationalize things as 3D objects and to understand how a perspective and scale works on a 3D object. I think because that's a commonality I see in across all of the flat earthers, and I've seen a few flat earth videos since the podcast with Dave, simply because I found it really interesting, if nothing else. And that seems to be a lot of what they miss out on, the sense of scale. How do I explain? It's not very easy for them to understand or wrap their heads around
Wait,
this.
wait, wait. I have a way that can solve that problem. I
What's
have a
that?
okay. I had a friend share this. After the podcast, we started like I have a few friends that like they like world building and writing stories and stuff, and flat Earth is kind of like a cool like setting to have like a fantasy story. Where like
Mm.
imagine you have the flat Earth and you have like the Arctic barrier, right? What's beyond the barrier, right? Is there like Atlantis, Asgard, like other land masses? What about beyond that? Like I don't know. It seems like such a cool fantasy story, and I'm just like he shared this photo, right? It's a great theory. I think people will find this very interesting. Okay, so let me share the screen. All right, so I like to introduce to you the Great Ice Ball Earth Theory. Think about it, right? You have the flat Earth, right? But it only seems flat because it has almost no curvature because it's such a small portion of the Great Ice Ball, right? That's why it seems flat, right?
Mm.
But if you go out and view it from an outside perspective, you can see that it is actually, in fact, a sphere.
Mm.
But because it's such a small region, it's almost, this is a long distance, right? We're talking like, what is that? Like the entire circumference, like the
What's
huge,
the
like
circumference of
thousands of
the? I don't know.
kilometers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The curvature is negligible. nobody did an experiment where they checked the curvature of the Earth by pointing a telescope from the south of Argentina all the way to, Australia, Tasmania. If they had a telescope that pointed in this direction and it was powerful enough to penetrate the Earth's atmosphere, then they would maybe see a slight curvature, but nobody's done that experiment, right? It's possible that the Earth's governments are stopping people from conducting this experiment, because if they did, they would see that there's a slight curvature and that we're in fact in a great ice ball.
Wow. Okay, that is a theory that I'm willing to get behind. Maybe David was right. Maybe this is actually the truth. When he said that they weren't able to dig down, it's because they hit this rock hard ice ball.
Yes, and as you can see, it's possibly hollow. They don't want to show us Earthlings, what's inside the Earth, right? It could be God. It could be all the gods from all the cultures of the world. Think about it, right? Where did we come up with all of these ideas of like gods? It's because they were real. It just makes sense, right? They all live inside the great ice ball, right? That's heaven. That's actually where heaven is.
Dude, that's absolutely hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. That's something you should make a movie about. That is something that you should definitely make a movie
man, that's
about.
actually kind of cool.
Yeah, so what are your theories on the flat earthers? Not the flat earth, but the flat earthers, and why they are the way they are.
You know what? Actually, I saw a interesting video where this historian was talking about, Europe in the Middle Ages, right? And at the time, right, the world, the social, like the societally wide, like social worldview, right? The prevailing worldview at the time was that, God is real. Like, not saying that he isn't, right? But like, he is real. Like, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. He exists. You're going to hell if you don't, pray or whatever, right? And also that, like, all of the stories of the Bible, that's fact, that's historical truth. And you have to you have to follow like church dogma. I think like in Spain they had like inquisitions and stuff. If you even went even slightly off of like orthodox practices, and that includes I'm pretty sure they were also not flat earthers. At least they had that, but they did have the idea that Earth is in the center and then the sun is orbiting Earth.
Yeah.
So like that was, if you went against that, right, that was blasphemy, right? And so everyone just sort of accepted that, this is a different time. Nobody had like the political mobilization that we have nowadays, right? Most people were serfs or, merchants, and they had like other things to worry about than, this stuff. And so, but there was a lot of cases where people will put on trial for saying blasphemous things like, oh, God doesn't exist, or, oh, like, questioning various things. But they didn't have that. They weren't going about it in an intellectual perspective, mostly kind of like rebellious, kind of like frustration. They'd get frustrated because at the time, the church, it wasn't all like sunshine and rainbows. They also had like pretty blatant corruption, and you can even in some cases you can even bring it into question, like whether they even believed in God or not, or if they're just taking the job for the good pay and stuff, right? And so they, regular folk, they recognize that, and then they lash out by saying these blasphemous things. But that all changed eventually, right? The whole like worldview gradually began to change over time, through like all these scientific observations, like, oh, Earth isn't in the middle of the solar system, it's orbiting the sun, because of all of these scientific experiments that we did. And over time, Western society kind of became more, I think actually Christianity kind of brought this upon themselves, because for them, to understand God, you have to understand the world, because God created the world. And through observation of the world, you can get closer to God. And so people began to observe the world and realize, wait, hold on a second here. And
Things are not what they seem.
yeah, so now I think nowadays, because we have a more, skeptical scientific worldview that's, prevailing, you have these people who are kind of like those people in the Middle Ages who are frustrated and lashing out because they see some kind of injustice, whether it be in Dave's case where it's like, oh, everyone's an enemy of God and this is all a conspiracy, and people are becoming more atheists because the governments are aliens.
I did catch that as well.
Yeah, that was basically the source of his belief for everything that if he opened up with that, his word would it would have like fallen apart right away. But he left it at the end. And I think that's smart because you don't want to scare away everyone with too much mental gymnastics, right? You want to ease them into the mental gymnastics.
And honestly, I wanted to actually touch upon his, the first question I asked him is like, what made you become a flat earther? And he was like, that's the incorrect question to ask. And he jumps into the first fact as to why the earth is flat. And I don't think he wanted really to get into that. But I was genuinely interested in wanting to know what made him this way, right? Because there has to be something that has triggered it, right? You don't just wake up one day and think that the earth is flat, right? There has to be something that goes on for you to feel this way, right? And it doesn't, the story he told was about his friend or something. His friend said, hey, check this out. And he was like, holy shit, the earth is flat, right? But there is a lot more to it. At least I have a feeling.
That didn't actually happen, right? I had a fundamentalist Christian coworker who brought up how this one atheist lawyer back in like the oldie times who went and did a investigation into the Bible and to basically prove that like Christ wasn't resurrected or something, but then he realized, oh wait, no, he did, and he became a Christian, and that was like his big revelation. I look it up, it's like, no, that never happened. First of all, he was always Christian.
Of course.
Like there was never a time when he wasn't Christian. Like, and this wasn't back in the Middle Ages. This was like when it was more acceptable to be an atheist. So it wasn't like he was hiding it. But even if he was hiding it, even if it was in the Middle Ages, you'd have cross-referencing sources with this, that would show like, oh, more of his personal life and more of like conversations that he had with close, relatives. Because you can't because if the argument is he was pretending to be a Christian, but he was actually an atheist, where is, there's no source on that. That's just like something you made up, right? Like, right? Like,
I get it. Yeah. The thing that really grinds my gears with the flat earthers is the fact that they say that we are being lied to. Fair enough. Okay, we are being lied to. All right, things happen. Governments lie. We understand that. We know that. We've seen that happen in the past. But what you're suggesting is on a scale that is so massive, is so like it's so ginormous that everyone who is in a position of power, right? You're talking about governments. You're talking about these space agencies, all 70, how many space agencies are there in the world? 72, 73 or something?
Yeah.
All the governments, all the space agencies, all the scientists, right? All people of power, right? Anyone who's got more than let's say even a few $1 million or higher, right?
Or any like passing hobbies related to science.
Yeah, is in on the flat earth, and they know it. Like they know fully well that the earth is flat and we're keeping it a secret. Why has no one leaked it out yet? Why has no one come from the globe community? Let's call it the globe community, because or the ball licking community. Why has no one from the ball licking community come out and said, this is wrong, you all are being lied to? I am a scientist. I've seen, these are the documents, these things, X, Y, and Z prove that the earth is flat. We've gone to space. We've seen the earth is flat. All of the images that are on Google is a lie. Google is a lie. The CEO of Google is lying to you. Everyone in Google is lying to you. No one has said that, obviously, because it doesn't exist. The fact remains that if you want to keep a secret...
You're not thinking straight.
Oh,
they get
sorry.
silenced. They get
Ah.
silenced by Interpol. You know, every journalist that blew the whistle, they didn't get it out in time. They got killed. They got assassinated by the establishment.
Of
That's
course.
easy clap right there.
Oh, okay, of course, of course. All right, so how about this one then? If the Earth is really flat, okay, uh, and it's surrounded by a wall of ice, all right, how many millions of flat Earthers are there in the world? I'm sure there are a few million, all right. If nothing less, there are a few million, all right, or maybe a few 100,000, all right. Let's say 7 to 800,000 of them, which you can expect essentially in a world of 7 billion people, all right. Let's just say that. Why can't each of them put down $1, just $1, all right? Get 7 to 800,000 dollars, sponsor an expedition to Antarctica, all right? Get all your fucking weapons because I'm sure all of them have guns. Since most of them are in America, they all have guns. Get all your weapons, go to the Antarctic border, so to say, all right, and take video evidence of it, send it to everyone in the world. Why has no one done that yet?
I actually looked this up, right? I'm just thinking like this is like the easiest thing you could do is actually just fly to the edge and then pass through the South Pole, come out the other end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go from, like what is it? Like go from South Africa to like New Zealand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I looked it up and actually it's very like regulated there because it's the only people that could be there are like the scientific community.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up and you have to like I'm sure it's possible. I don't see why it wouldn't, but like because the Antarctica is like one big like nature reserve because there's a lot of important science that's being done there in regards to like prehistory. I'm pretty sure it's possible to just, get
But who's to
a
stop them, right?
government to
Like,
like agree to, get into like one of those like big like airplanes that could do like the long flights and actually do that just to like settle this because like pretty sure everyone working in any agency, in any scientific agency, in any country would just be like, you know what? That's sounds fine by me, like just let's go.
you know what? Here's an idea,
We'll
all right?
pay. This is gonna be a government funded education thing. Actually, they probably wouldn't want the government to fund it because then they'd be like, oh, okay,
You're
they
pulling a
they
blanket
hacked
over
the
our eyes.
plane to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
change course or something. No, this has to be a plane that they bought, that they checked. Ironically, there's like actual engineers in the flat Earth community. So get them to like make some checks to see like navigation, everything, all that is like clean from all like government meddling, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just chart the flight, South Africa to New Zealand, perfect, right over the South Pole.
And hey, safety in numbers, right? Here's an idea for the flat Earth community. If any flat earthers are watching this, and I'm sure because I'm gonna put it up and I'm gonna send it over to David as well. All right, he's gonna probably put this video up on his Facebook page. So any flat earther who's watching this, here's an idea: start a Facebook group or a Facebook page or a Facebook event, whatever you want. You remember Area 51 where they wanted to storm Area 51, right?
Oh,
Start
that
something
was
up.
just like that was so funny.
That was hilarious, dude. Why didn't you actually do it, right? Since all of you guys, all right, I'm talking directly to the flat earthers over here. Since all of you guys believe so deeply that the Earth is flat and that the Antarctic border is regulated, why don't you
Also,
all
more
go?
importantly, they only believe their eyes. Like no
Exactly.
like infer no scientific experiment that can like indirectly show that they prove them wrong. So far, they didn't care, right? They
Mhm.
believe in like the false perspective photos and that Baja California thing. If they believe that, then they only believe their eyes. So they need that direct experience. I think in the previous one, I also brought up like I don't know if I brought this up, but maybe also instead, if like that's not allowed, get a ship and just circumnavigate Antarctica.
Mhm.
Like that also works, right? If
Yeah.
the flat Earth theory is correct, if they go like counterclockwise, right? Then they'd be turning right the whole time, right?
Right.
But in this case, they'd be turning left the whole time. And
Mm.
if they're turning left the whole time, then something's up, right? And worse is that when they return to their original position after turning left the whole time, that's kind of like, you can't, unless you think that the government hacked your eyes, then what, what's happening, right?
Yep. So all of these guys, what they need to do is get a whole bunch of ships together, kind of like how it was in Dunkirk, all right, back during the World War. All of you guys, like, to get civilian ships, safety numbers,
Yeah.
am I right? Float all the way down to Antarctica, all of you guys, right? So like in the horizon, whoever's protecting the border over there will see like 100,000 ships and be like, holy fuck, we are so screwed right
Live
now.
stream the whole thing. Live stream the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Get like a
You'll get
chance.
so many views on Twitch. It probably you'd get
It'll
donations,
break
you
the
get
internet.
funded.
Oh yeah,
You'd
for
be
sure.
you'd actually break even.
For sure, dude. Like this is an idea. Look, flat earth guys. Like, I mean, I'm giving them an idea. Like, this is something which
if
can
nothing
be big.
else works, right? If nothing else works, then this is the only way I could think of, to really just settle this argument.
Exactly. I don't know what else to say, man. Like, if they really want to
I
believe
don't know
it,
either.
that's what they need to do, right? And like I said, safety in numbers, right? I mean, they can't take down all of you guys, right? I mean, we all have cell phones, right? As long as you have a cell phone and you're able to shoot that
There would
image.
definitely be public outrage if the government starts shooting down your boats, right?
Mm.
Assuming you're not breaking any international laws, should be fine.
Exactly. I mean, like the flat earth guys can go to war with Antarctica, and then we'll know the truth. Then we all will know the truth for sure, because the flat earthers
will back you
would have
guys
seen
up,
it.
right? If they start shooting down your plane or boat or whatever, we'll just be like, damn, what are they hiding?
Yeah, exactly. So I will personally donate to the cause. I will personally donate to the cause if that happens.
I'll drop $5 of my poor student come.
Yeah, I'll probably
That's
drop. I'll probably drop $5 as well. Maybe sponsor. I don't know. Maybe sponsor like half a gallon of gas or something. I don't know. But whatever. I mean, ultimately, what it comes down to is the fact that the belief is so ludicrous, and it's so broad and so all-encompassing, right? That it just cannot be real, according to me. All right. Don't, for all the flat earthers listening, don't jump down my throat. I know I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments. We both are probably going to get roasted in the comments again, and that's absolutely fine. But go ahead, prove your thing. For me, the earth is round, and the belief, whatever you might believe, it's so ridiculous that I personally don't think that it is possible that the earth is flat. And no disrespect to Dave. I personally like the guy. I think he's really awesome, and he's really charismatic, and he really enjoys doing this. You can see that he really enjoys doing this. I mean, he probably does this for a living. I don't know. He's got a podcast and all kinds of things. So, by all means, he's a good guy. No disrespect to him, but the belief is just something that I cannot get behind. And we both have given our reasoning as to why we cannot get behind this.
I think the one thing I could tell the audience watching is to think critically on the points that we made. Just like Mark Weigel here has pointed out, that we need to rewatch the past broadcast, and we need to think critically at each point, right? I'm sure what he actually means is that when he says think critically, he probably just means just accept it without thinking, because that whole video we were thinking, we were actually bringing up counterpoints. And that got lost in translation.
Clearly.
Yeah, just think critically.
Clearly. I mean, nothing against you guys. Honestly, I find it entertaining. It's something.
These comments are actually just hilarious. Oh my goodness.
Dude, they are absolutely insane. It's something that I personally didn't. This is my first time I'm getting internet hate, by the way. This is the first time I'm getting internet hate, like mass scale internet hate. And
I mean, this isn't that bad. This is like 77 comments, and not all of them are like.
No, all of them are. It's all of them, dude.
No. There's this one guy who's like, "Strange you question history is made up," right? Like, I think that's pointing to the.
Oh, okay.
Dave.
Yeah.
So not all of them. Like I think there was. I think there's like this other guy down here who's trying to reach out to you. at the very
Yeah,
beginning.
something. Yeah, I know. I didn't really get that, but whatever. Ultimately believe whatever you want to believe. If you think the Earth is flat, man, the Earth is flat. You're entitled to your opinion, and that's absolutely fine. But at the same time,
That's what's great about the world we live in right now.
mm,
Is that you won't get killed by the science inquisition for having a weird opinion about the world.
yeah, I mean, we live in a society, guys.
We live in a
um,
society.
I mean, but the funny part is, right? This is the flat Earth variant of cancel culture. It's like they're all trying to cancel you for speaking out against the flat Earth theory, so to say.
I'm sorry to break the bubble, but we're not we're we're not the only ones. We're not like the NASA hired. Actually, a lot of people were really fixated with my NASA shirt. I don't even know where I got that shirt, but they're like, ah, yes, the NASA fanboy.
Yeah, I knew for a fact that the moment that you had that in your profile picture, I was like, you're probably gonna get ripped for that.
Worst mistake.
Yeah. But I mean, it's
Yeah, we're not NASA shills. We weren't hired. You can literally put anyone else in front of in this podcast. It would be the same arguments here. It would just be the same. In fact, maybe even better arguments.
yeah, we aren't scientists, all right? Like I do a lot of research myself. I'm sure Anton, you do a lot of research yourself. You're a really intelligent guy. But I am, the thing is, honestly, if you told me
No,
the
that's
Earth
the
was
thing. We
flat,
don't need to do research. Like as
mhm,
people pointed out, we thought critically,
yeah,
right? We didn't parrot like some scientific technobabble when we were talking about like his like some of his points. It was literally like standard stuff, right? That you
yeah,
just
like the
like
perspective
know
thing.
as
Yeah.
yeah, like this isn't fancy, like techno babble that's hard to understand, right? I think that's one of the big problems right now is that scientific education, right, isn't like
Mhm.
what was it? No, science communication is like a tough hurdle to cross because a lot of the stuff that needs to be communicated, you need to understand prior things and you build up on it, right?
Mhm.
And when you're talking about like if science channels talk about like dark holes and or black holes and like quasars and stuff, you need to know a lot like
Yeah.
to really understand that stuff. So
Yeah.
most of it is just to like pique your interest so that maybe you could like get into it and learn about yourself. But like this like perspective, that's like everyday like experience. That's not anything crazy.
Honestly, if you had to tell me that the Earth is flat, I'm a kind of guy who will give you the benefit of the doubt. But when it gets to a point where it's so ridiculous that basic
Like when it starts
common
dipping into
sense,
conspiracism.
yeah,
Like
and
at
the
that point, you
fact
can't
that
argue. Like there's no
you know
way. Like
like when I told him, I was like, okay, so World War II didn't exist because he was talking about the Antarctic Treaty and the fact that I don't know, that we aren't allowed to go there because they gave us an
yeah,
excuse or whatever, and I was like, so you're telling me all the countries signed on it? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, so what happened to the World War? What happened to the Cold War? Like, is that all fake? And then he goes and brings up the fact that we all were living in harmony at one point on this giant continent or whatever. And it's like, that's like, where do you go from there, right? I mean, if you have someone who believes this, and you said something to the effect of like, so you're saying all of history is made up, and Dave's like, yep.
it was just a nonchalant yes. Like
Like,
holy crap, what writers did they hire to like write all those history books and make that shit up, and also write old history books that they artificially aged and buried into the ground or like put into some like hidden area. Like they had to do a lot, and all of that writing, like holy crap, what writers did they hire to write all those history books? Because they are geniuses. They're some of the creative minds of the world, right? To write all of that.
it's
Oh my
insane,
god. Like
dude. It's absolutely
like you read
insane.
history and you think like, wow, that actually happened. That's crazy. Like and
You know what? I'll tell you what,
And
as
oh
standalone
my God.
theories, right? If someone had a theory that said that, hey, listen, there could be an ice wall around the world, all right? There could be an ice wall and we don't know what's behind it, all right? And we could be living in the Antarctic basin, as Dave likes to put it. That sounds like pretty credible theory, right? I'll back that up, fine. But, you have to give me evidence to support why you feel that way. And that's what the flat earth is lacking, right? Is that they don't have that evidence, right? The thing, what they say is
No,
that this
they
is a
have
lie, this
evidence.
is a
They
lie.
have evidence.
The
But
evidence are
the
lies.
evidence, again, is like what I mentioned earlier. It's like confirmation bias evidence. It
Yeah.
is not
It's not
done
really
with,
evidence. Yeah.
it's not done with, proper scientific inquiry, right?
Mm.
It could be explained in a number of ways, sometimes very like embarrassingly simple ways,
Mm.
but they don't want
Hey,
to actually try.
I mean, but honestly, I'm happy that I had that podcast, and I'm happy that I had you on. Really, you did like a brilliant job. it was
Oh,
it
thanks,
was
man.
awesome. Like I've had a few people tell me that you did an excellent job fact checking that guy, and I want to echo that to you. Regardless of whatever the comments say about you or me or whatever,
No,
like
they're pretty funny. They're pretty
yeah,
funny.
yeah. But you did a fucking amazing job, dude. And kudos to you for that. Thanks again, man, for coming on.
Yeah, no
Appreciate
problem.
it. Appreciate it.
Sorry for
Appreciate the time.
delaying it. I was like really
No, you were busy,
basically.
dude. And same with me. Honestly, like I was just
Oh
so
yeah.
tired at the end of my day that I just didn't want to do anything. Like I just want to go home
Yeah.
and relax, just
Understandable.
chill, and
Understandable.
just let go of everything, because work has been, like, without getting into too much detail, work has been like really fucking stressful for me. I mean,
Oh damn.
I moved into a new role, and the kind of stuff that they that they got me doing, while it's really interesting and stuff, like it saps a lot of my energy out from my day. Like I had lunch yesterday at like 4:30 p.m. Like
Oof.
yeah, just before going home.
Lunch.
Yeah, I had lunch at 4:30 p.m. yesterday, so like I've been wanting to do the podcast, but I just like on the weekends, like I'm just like I'm so drained. I just want to sleep.
Yeah.
I've come to
It's
that
important
point.
for these podcasts to have like, a lot of energy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't have that energy, right? And it just you can hear it, and I have done podcasts in the past where I don't fully like the energy that I have or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just, I'm not happy with it. I just don't want to do it. So yeah, that was like, so this is my first back in like almost a month and a half, honestly. And now that I've sort of figured out certain things at work, I'm gonna be doing much more of them, and I have a few ideas up my sleeve as well. So yeah, hopefully I'm gonna keep the ball rolling, no pun intended. Yeah. All right, on
I'll
on
keep
that
the
note,
ball rolling too on my end.
yeah, it'll be like a tile, I would think, for the flat earthers, like a tile, because it's kind of flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a donut. All right. All right, cool.
Donut Earth theory.
There's a theory like that, by the way, the donut earth theory. There's a
It's actually a
theory
lot
too.
more credible.
Really, yeah. I
Because
wouldn't be
actually
surprised.
there was actually what is it, a simulation that was run on a donut shaped planet, and they found that there was actually like some stable orbits that can be created
Mm.
where the sun would like pass through the donut up and down,
Ah,
like assuming that the sun is like a small tiny thing.
flat
Like basically
earthers.
if you had a planet inside the donut,
Yeah.
it would go up and down basically through the donut hole, and it would be in a stable orbit. So
So
it's
for
not
the
even in
flat
orbit.
earthers, you can now become donut earthers, and that's like a niche. That's like ultra niche.
It's like
So
way better of a theory than like the sun just like floating in the sky and just going around in a circle, because
yep.
no law of physics can support that. But a donut Earth where like something's like passing through the center, right? That actually
Mm.
makes sense. Whether or not that actually translates to proper day and night cycles on like the donut Earth is another thing.
Mm.
And whether or not like our atmosphere is so thick that we can't see the other side of the donut,
That would
that's
be
also another
interesting.
thing. But
Yeah, that would be
it's slightly
interesting.
more credible.
On that note, we'll end it right here. Thanks again.
All right then.
speak to you soon, sir, and expect me to send this to you once it's ready.
Alrighty. Or
Take care, man. Cheers. Peace
cheers,
out.
man. See ya.
Bye-bye.